what a start. Inside out and upside down. No stress, I'ma clean up this mess.
Hi everyone, it's Leigh here. Welcome back to my studio, and a big hello to anyone who's visiting for the first time. Hope you enjoy this video. So some time ago, and it was actually on the 27th of June, I put out a video where I used leaves and other household items to stamp some patterns onto some tissue paper. And finally, I've been able to get my follow-up video done. So I'm going to just show you how I added inks and in some case paint, alcohol ink, so distress oxides to colour the papers. And at the end I make a couple of collages using the ugly ones that I didn't like, just to show that if something doesn't look that great, it doesn't mean that it's not worth keeping. So in this one, I've already started adding things on. I did a couple before I started filming. That green and yellow that's on there at the moment is distress oxide spray, and I'm just using a little bit of artist's ink to add some warm colours with a bit of contrast in there. If you can hear some banging coming through in the background, they're building a house over the back fence. So that's what that is. It's not somebody that I've got locked in the cupboard trying to escape. And it sounds like there's two people and they're both hammering at the moment. So the timing has been perfect. It's either the lawnmower man across the road or the builders. So never mind, doesn't matter. So with this one I watered down the ink to see whether that would still hold its colour. It wasn't too bad, but note to self, keep blue away from orange because it makes brown. Which is okay if you want brown. But if you don't want brown, don't do it. So sometimes what was on the back of the paper was actually nicer than what was on the front, and that's my protector sheet there, and that ends up looking quite nice by the time I finish with it. So this one has got a lot of black on it, and this is the ink. That colour is burnt sienna, and you can see down in the bottom left hand corner where it touched one of the wet ones, and a bit of ink is transferred onto it. So I thought I'd just use my little brayer to spread that ink around rather than a brush or water it down. And now I'm going to add some of this yellow, which is an oxide spray, and ran the brayer through it again. So when the colours combine, they make quite nice tones, oranges and nice autumny sort of colours. Now this was not a good idea. This is drawing ink, and I used the brayer and spread it out, but there was too much of it, so I thought, well, I'll put another piece of paper on top of it and try and get some of it off. But it was really sticky, and I really struggled to get the two pieces of paper separated. Before I put the new piece of paper on top, I've actually added some yellow to try and make some green. Here we go. Another thing I found too, if you're going to use a brayer on tissue paper, don't run it backwards and forwards through sticky stuff because it just pulls the paper up. So yeah, that black ink, it's been in that little squeezy bottle for some time. I think I need to throw it away and refill the bottle. So this is one of the ones that I really wasn't that keen on by the time I'd finished with it. So that's the piece that I put on top. But the other side of that one that I just put to the side turned out quite nice. Now I use some of this in the end in a collage. Now to the right hand side I don't know if you can see it. There's something, it looks a little bit like a crocodile with its mouth open. And when I had torn that piece out and turned it up the other way, I thought it looked like a person with their arms up. So later on I use that to make a collage. This is a piece of A3 paper that I've just copy paper. I thought I'd try and get some of that excess ink off with. So that turned into a nice piece of collaging paper, which will come in useful later on. I love that the burnt sienna down the bottom, that big orangey patch, looks really nice. So I had to dry them because I don't have a lot of space to put things out to dry, so I had to dry them with my heat gun several times during this process. With this one I decided to put some paint on it, so I've got two colours, a limey green and yellow. And just rolling that out with the brayer. So one's a lemon yellow and the other one is actually called Daintree, so it's a really nice colour. It's by an Australian paint company called Holcroft. I've gotten rid of my brown paper that I was using underneath because it was getting really wet from the inks, and I didn't want my desk to get covered in ink, so I put a towel down instead. What I'm sponging on there is a bit of the turquoise ink, the artist's ink that's been watered down a little bit. So I actually like this one. It's a bit boring as far as pattern goes, but I like the colours on it. And I've just sprayed a little bit of gold mist onto that and let it run down the page. So that one will get put aside to be dried. Now this one was made originally with a piece of a placemat sort of thing that it like foam that Julie had given me, and I used that as a stamp to make that black pattern in the background. And it didn't really, it works well on a gel plate, but it didn't really work too well on this paper. So I'm just adding some yellow lines on it. And I sort of started thinking, what would look nice with yellow? Let's put a bit of red on there, and the red should mix with yellow and should have orange patches throughout it. So I've got this paint. I'm not sure what brand it is. Joe Sonia by the look of it. But it's a really old bottle, and it's supposed to be liquid, very liquid, but it's not. It's very sticky. So it didn't spread very well. This is one of the ones that I really did not like when it was finished, but when I cut it up and used bits of it, it looked okay. So I'm just adding some metallic watercolour paint. I'm just using like a 1/2 inch angle brush for that. You've got to be really careful when the paper gets too wet. It has, it's quite delicate, but it is supposed to be what a wet strength tissue. I think it's something like that. And that is, if I can see, it's ink of some sort. Looks like the burnt sienna. It's probably got a bit of that red mixed into it, because I wasn't really washing my brushes between product, unless I was going from blue to red or something like that. And I thought I'll just use a sponge and smush out the gold and that burnt sienna, just see how that turns out. This was quite interesting, this piece. I was just using it to mop up some of the excess liquid on the bottom page, but it's turned, like I've done it on a couple of the prints, and it ended up really nice. I like it. I really like it. So I decided I'll put some purple ink in here. So in for a penny, in for a pound, and straight away the purple starts turning this horrible brown colour. So it's doing that because it's mixing with the yellow. But it's okay. I mean, Collage Papers, how can you really go wrong with any of them? But just some of them, it's just a matter of taste, I think. So I'm splattering some of that white gold all over it, which is metallic watercolour, with my fan brush and drying it off. And it's nice and shiny. It actually felt really nice, this piece. I just didn't like the way it looked. So here's one that was a bit of a disaster pants. And I've gone to the back side of it because all that black ink on the front is too overpowering. So that was peacock feathers, the first spray that I put down, and then some burnt sienna ink, and I'm just activating the oxide with some water. And I've got that piece again, so you can see how wet that is underneath. And just got some more blobs onto that page. So this is starting to look a bit better. And here's the other page. Now this one is purple ink that I'm adding on there. So I just used the lid of a coffee jar to make those circles on the tissue originally. I was using black gesso when I did that. So I just wanted to get that spread a bit, but I didn't like the way it had that big gap in the middle, so I tried to fold it a different way, get rid of that gap in the middle, but I didn't, and then I thought I better not fiddle with it too much. So once again I used that other print to suck up some of the purple. See how nice that's looking now? That's really nice, I love that. A bit of yellow spray, and you instantly see the colour change when the yellow hits that purple. So this is peacock feathers, and I'm going to dab some of that on with the sponge. Even though that yellow is dry, it still makes the peacock feathers turn green when it goes on top of the yellow. And that oxide is already activating by itself before I even added any water, so there must have been a bit of dampness in that paper. So this one I'm just smudging the white paint that's left on that piece of paper I was using as a palette all over it, just so I don't waste it. I think I just called it white paint, it's yellow paint, I'm not sure. With this one, which was one of my favourites when I was doing the original stamping, I'm just using my Distress Oxide pads, ink pads, and I'm going to just rub some subtle colours all over it. So I use browns and yellow and pink. So I thought that had a nice pastel-y look about it. And then when I wet it, most of the colour went through to the back of the paper. Yeah, so I'm just using that print to pick up the excess moisture off there. So a lot of that colour carries over to that other print. Well, that's the right side and that's the bottom side. So all the inks on the bottom really. So this one I am using reverse psychology. I turned it over and I'm doing this on the back to see whether I could get the ink to go to the front rather than it happening the opposite way around. So pretty much applying it the same way I did the other. And you can see it's coming through brighter on the bottom, which is the front. And I thought, oh, instead of spraying some water on, I'll just use the fan brush to splatter it so that it would be blotches of darker colour. And that's how that ended up. So that's where I applied the ink, and that's where it's come through to the other side. This one I decided to add some of this turquoise onto. I've had these inks for donkey's ages. I don't know how old they are. Quite old. And using another one to mop up the excess. It's a beautiful colour, that one. I love it. Art Spectrum is the brand of that one. So you can see the yellow and the turquoise together. It looks really pretty. I just sprayed a bit of ground espresso on there. Just grunge it up a little bit. And a bit of purple around the edges and in a couple of places. And a bit of burnt sienna. So that looks quite dynamic, that secondary piece there. That's alcohol ink. It's a red. So you can see the way the alcohol ink spreads. I thought I'd try adding a bit of water to the alcohol ink to see whether it did anything to it, but it didn't seem to make it move anymore. And then just putting that other one down on top to get rid of the excess moisture. Okay, so this is what I ended up with. This is really ugly. I mean, as a whole, parts of it are lovely, and I know if I tore it up into pieces, it's perfect for collaging with, and I can always add some more colour. This one I don't mind, so nothing went through to the back of that one, so that was paint and oxide ink and gold ink as well. So it's nice and shimmery. I used two different coloured paints on that, I think. No, that one was just yellow. So that's quite nice, don't mind that. This one I like. Both sides of it. The oxide inks and alcohol inks, if they're used, just go straight through the paper. So yeah, that one turned out nice. This is the one that I did before I started filming. I should put them over there, distracting. Yeah, so I like this one. It was one of my favourites when I did the stamping. It's nice and bright and will make great collage paper, and then on the back it's different again. You can't see the stamping on the other side. This one, this is where I poured the drawing ink on top of it, and that was a big mistake. So that's sticky as anything, and I had a lot of trouble getting those pieces of paper separated. So I don't like that, but it still has its merit. But on the other side, you've got that, which I really like. So that's oxide, that's burnt sienna, artist's acrylic ink, I think. Yeah, all sorts of things on that, as well as the stamping, which was originally done with black gesso. This one is the piece of paper that I was putting down on top of the others when I was doing it to lift off the excess ink. So I really like that, both sides, apart from that big black mark there. Yeah, so I like the way that turned out. I mean, it's not a work of art, but sections of it are perfect. You know, like you take different bits of it. It's perfect collage paper. This one I like as well. Both sides of it are good. And you can see the way the Distress Oxide has worked. And that one was the Artist's ink. Yeah, I like that one. This is another one where I use this piece to mop up the excess off another piece. Both sides I like. I did actually end up adding some more oxides to this. So that one's fairly pretty. That is the end of a peg, clothes peg basket, one that you assemble yourself. So that's just, I cut the handles off it and made a stamp out of it. This was one of my favourites of all the stamped pieces of paper. I was surprised how subtle the oxide ended up on it, and most of it came through to the back. So it's funny the way it works. So yeah, but both sides are nice. This one has got, looks like blood stains all over it. Murdered. Someone was murdered on this one. Yeah, so this had a bit of everything on it. It wasn't one of my favourite prints with the Leigh stamping on it to begin with. And that is alcohol ink. That could be a bit of paint on that. Maybe. Not sure. That's burnt sienna, turquoise ink, artist's ink. And that, yeah, I'm pretty sure that yellow is paint. So this one is the one I used to put the, onto the excess ink to get it off. And it picked up a bit of that yellow paint. It's not bad on the other side, but a bit dull. And this is my favourite side here. So ink, alcohol ink, ink, paint. Okay, this one I absolutely hate. Vomit. Torn up, it's probably going to be okay. Back of it's not even nice. All I did was ruin a good stamped piece of paper, I think. This one you didn't see me do, and it's alcohol inks. Did it before I filmed. The alcohol inks have a completely different feel to the others, the other inks. And that's the back, because it just comes straight through. And this one was not a great stamped paper. And that's just turquoise ink and yellow ink. So oxide and ink on that one. So anyway, I've got a nice little bundle of papers to use for collaging. And what I really liked was this. So this was just a piece of A3 paper that I was using to mop up excess ink on. So that, I like the way that turned out. That patterning that's on there must be from that blue and white striped towel that I had. This piece, and I've already used a bit of it. I liked it so much. This is the brown paper I had on the bottom. Just absorbed some of the ink. Okay, so I hope you will give it a try to make some collage papers with inks and paints and stamping. It's all good fun. And some of the ones that aren't very nice can still have other things added to them. And as I said, when you take parts of them away, like if you took a strip of that and add it to something, then it looks really nice. Whereas on the whole, it's not that great. Anyway, that was good fun. I enjoyed doing that, and now I can do some collaging with it. So I've got a book, a visual diary here. I've got some Mod Podge. I've torn up some book pages and torn up some pieces of my backing sheet. So I'm going to use that to make a collage with, and then add some of the ugly papers that I just made. Some of the ones that I thought were hideous, you can, well, it's a bit like the ugly duckling turning into a swan. So when you use them, cut them up into pieces or tear them into pieces, they look totally different to when they are on a whole sheet. So once I got my base page covered, I let it dry, and I've taken some pieces of the not so nice papers, and this is the piece that I thought looked like a crocodile, but when I turned it up the other way I could see that it looked like a person standing with their arms up as if they were holding something heavy. and that's what I went with. I was originally going to put that couple into the collage, but I decided to not do that in the end and just use this piece and the circle of the orange and yellow. And you'll see what I'm talking about when I flip this over. The only other thing I did to that page was I splattered a little bit of ink onto it, blue ink. This is what I was talking about when I said, you know, pieces of the paper are different to the whole sheet of the paper. So, you know, don't ever throw out a piece of paper because you don't think it's worthwhile keeping, because there's always something in there. And I'll probably come back in a bit later and outline the body of the person just to make it stand out a little bit more. But that's pretty much all I did to that, to make that collage. And on this next one, I'm just keeping it really simple. I've just got this one single piece torn off that sheet and the paper dolls, and I'm going to put them down together. It totally works, and it's so simple. Sometimes less is more, and this is one of those cases. And I love the simplicity, and this has got a sort of sophistication about it by it not being overworked and not being drowned out by background elements, and I think it's just a really nice collage. It doesn't need anything else on the page. This is a couple that I did beforehand and used bits of the same paper, so it's all the same paper, and I've just used a couple of the paper dolls to make it. That's the one with the person holding up the ball. And that's the one where I just used one piece of paper and the paper dolls. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I've given you some ideas of how to make collage papers, how to use them when you don't really like them. So give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, leave me a comment, and if you're not already a subscriber, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. So hooroo from Australia. Bye for now.